HR fired me for working 2 jobs and called me replaceable after catching me near a rival office. They thought I'd betrayed them. They had no idea I'd been the only one keeping their systems alive. They also had no idea that the woman they were trying to humiliate had already said yes to a better life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That morning started like any other at Helix Systems. Glass walls, white floors, fake plants lined up like they'd been printed off the same corporate 3D printer. I was halfway through my first coffee when the calendar invite popped up in the corner of my screen. Clarification meeting, Dorian Hale, 15 minutes. No agenda, no notes, just that. Clarification meeting is HR speak for, you're about to be told something you can't fix. I sat there staring at the invite while my chat notifications blinked in the corner and my alert dashboard hummed in the background. My phone buzzed beside my keyboard. Lucas, you alive or already married to your servers? Dinner tonight, right? I got the reservation. I typed back with one hand. Me, alive, mostly. I'll be there, promise. I hit accept on the calendar invite. Promises are easy when you ignore the smoke. 15 minutes later, I walked into a small conference room that always smelled faintly like anxiety and lemon cleaner. Dorian Hale from HR sat at the head of the table with his fake, calm face on. His tie was straight, his hair too neat, the kind of man who ironed emails before sending them. Beside him sat Nova Train from compliance, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keys, like she was about to take minutes at my execution. Neither of them smiled for real. Just those tight, controlled expressions people use when they think they're about to deliver a very important lesson. Morning, Arya, Dorian started, with that polished, fake-friendly tone he'd perfected. Thanks for joining us on short notice. I just nodded and sat down. I've learned that silence makes people like him nervous, and I was too tired for small talk anyway. He turned his tablet around and slid it across the table toward me. Blurry photo, my hoodie, my laptop bag, my face half turned. Outside the Veritas Dynamics building last Friday. Definitely me. Nova's voice was clipped, precise. We've confirmed this is you entering a competitor's office. I didn't so much as blink. Sure, I said. They asked for a short consulting session, non-competitive work, weekends only, totally above board. Dorian leaned back in his chair, folding his hands together like he was on some kind of panel. Our policy, he said, doesn't allow outside employment that might conflict with Helix interests. Even the appearance of conflict is unacceptable. He loved that phrase, appearance of conflict. It meant he didn't need evidence, just vibes. That phrase isn't in the policy I signed, I replied. I've got the PDF and its last modified date. Nova's fingers paused over the keyboard for a fraction of a second. She noticed the detail. She just didn't care. You're lucky we don't press charges, Dorian added. This could fall under intellectual property exposure. I could feel heat rising in my neck, that familiar burn of unfairness, but my voice stayed even. I didn't copy anything. I didn't even use company equipment. You can check the logs if you're feeling brave. He ignored that completely. You've been here what, 3 years? He asked, like he didn't already know my file by heart. You're good, Arya, but you're replaceable. Brand loyalty matters. Maybe you've lost sight of that. Replaceable. That word always comes right before a mistake. I'd heard it before, not here. From an ex-manager at a different company, right before his product launch went sideways because he'd refused to listen. I should have swallowed the comment. Instead, I leaned forward just a little, just enough to puncture the invisible bubble of his comfort. If I'm replaceable, I said quietly, try running authentication without me for a week. Nova stopped typing. Dorian blinked. The smirk slipped a few millimeters. He picked up a folder from the side of the table and slid a paper in front of me. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. You'll be paid out for unused vacation. You can appeal through the usual channels. Right. The usual channels. The same ones that forwarded my risk reports directly into a black hole. I picked up the pen. No begging, no bargaining, no, but I gave everything to this place speech. If this was the game, they could have it. I signed where they had highlighted my name. Security will escort you to collect your things, Dorian said. Great service, I replied. The security guard who showed up looked more uncomfortable than I was. He had that apologetic slouch of someone who understood he was a prop in someone else's performance. We walked through the open office quietly. Monitors glowed. Keyboards clacked. No one spoke, but I could feel every set of eyes tracking my movement like I was a walking pop-up warning. My desk was the same mess as always. One monitor with too many tabs open. A cactus that somehow refused to die. My notebook, full of diagrams and emergency plans no one had ever bothered to read. A chipped mug that said, No route access for you. I dropped the mug into my backpack, closed the notebook, and grabbed my hoodie. I left the cactus perched on the corner of the desk. Some part of me wanted it to haunt the place. Nico? I heard a whisper. The junior contract engineer sitting nearby looked up from his screen, eyes wide. What happened? He whispered. Don't worry about it, I said. Just keep your backups up to date. Trust me. He looked confused, maybe scared. I didn't stop to explain. Security waited by the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the mirrored panel behind them, pale, tired, more annoyed than devastated. Behind me, people pretended to work while staring. They had no idea how much of the system still ran on code only I understood. The elevator ride down felt longer than it ever had going up. Every ding, a countdown. Ground floor. We stepped into the lobby. I handed the guard my badge. He took it like it was something contagious. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a second, I thought it might be Lucas asking about dinner reservations, normal life, something that didn't involve corporate executions. Instead, the notification banner showed a different name, Renata Voss. Still good for 3 p.m.? I stared at the screen. 3 years of my life behind me, trapped in glass and policy templates. A woman who actually respected my work waiting across the city. I typed back, me, better than good. I just became available full-time. Stepping outside, the sunlight hit me like a clean reboot. No badge, no fake meetings, no people pretending they owned me because I signed an offer letter. Just quiet, open air, traffic noise, and whatever came next. My name is Aria Vale, and I'm 34 years old. Until about 10 minutes ago, I was the cybersecurity lead, well, the only security engineer, at Helix Systems. I joined thinking it would be the kind of job you build a life around. Stability, growth, the kind of title you could tell your parents about without needing to explain. Helix's CTO, Bram Layton, sold it perfectly when he recruited me. He talked about building the foundation of Helix's digital future, creative freedom, cutting-edge autonomy. All those phrases that sound like opportunity until you realize they really mean, you'll be fixing everything alone. For a while, I convinced myself it was worth it. I had a decent paycheck, a small apartment with sunlight at the right times of day, a boyfriend, Lucas, who cooked when I forgot to eat and waited up for me when I stumbled in at 2 a.m. after a production fire. If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have told you my life was fine. Unbalanced, sure. Exhausting, absolutely. But fine. Now I was standing on the sidewalk with a backpack, a cactus, no job, and a 3 p.m. meeting that might change everything. I took a breath, let the office air burn off my skin, and started walking toward the parking lot. Helix Systems glared behind me in mirrored chrome. Somewhere up there, Dorian was already writing an email about maintaining brand loyalty. Somewhere down here, on street level, I was finally done being loyal to people who treated me like a replaceable line of code. And Helix was about to learn exactly what it feels like when the replaceable person walks away. Helix Systems didn't always feel like a bad decision. At the start, it actually looked promising. When I first joined, we had 8 people on the security team. 8 smart, weird, brilliant people who argued about hash functions over lunch and sent memes about 0 days in the middle of the night. Our Slack channel was alive 24/7. Not in a panic way, just in a we actually care about this way. We handled SSO, network monitoring, endpoint protection, and all the invisible glue work that keeps a company from making the news for a data breach. Those first few months felt like a small army that actually worked in sync. If something broke, someone grabbed it without drama. If someone was drowning in tickets, someone else picked up the slack. If alerts spiked at 3 a.m., we jumped on a call, swore at the logs, fixed it, then laughed about it the next day over cold coffee. I remember coming home one night, dropping my bag by the door, and finding Lucas asleep on the couch, TV still on, his phone on his chest. He blinked awake when I nudged his leg. "What time is it?" he mumbled. "Midnight," I said. "We had a minor meltdown, but it's fine now." He smiled sleepily. My heroic girlfriend saves the internet again. I rolled my eyes, but some part of me liked that he said heroic and meant it. Back then, it felt like we were all heroes. Together. Then came restructuring. They didn't call it layoffs. They called it cost optimization. Management said we were realigning resources and streamlining operational efficiency. What they meant was, they cut half the team in one afternoon. Bram, the CTO, pulled me aside after the announcement. "Temporary," he said, with that earnest, visionary tone he liked to use. "Just a rough quarter, Arya. Once we stabilize, we'll build the team back up. You're a cornerstone here." a cornerstone that was suddenly holding up half the building. By the next quarter, the other half was gone too. The rest of my team scattered, some pushed out, some smart enough to leave on their own. It was just me and one contractor who left 6 months later when HR denied his raise. That's how I became the entire security department. I handled everything: identity access, intrusion detection, logging, alerts, compliance checklists, audits, and all the weird edge cases no one else even knew existed. Every single thing with a password or a port somehow landed on my plate. There were weeks where I barely saw daylight. I'd get home at 2 a.m., crash for 3 hours, and wake up to a pager notification before the sun came up. My record was 43 alerts in one night. 43. One attack I'll never forget hit at 2:43 a.m. on a Tuesday. Some botnet from overseas started flooding our login API, choking the load balancer. Sessions were dying. Error logs looked like a horror movie. If it kept going, we were headed straight for a very public, very ugly outage. I patched in tighter firewall rules, spun up a backup cache, and as a last resort hotfix, stood up a throwaway proxy in my personal AWS. Risky, definitely not textbook, but it kept us online. By 4:00 a.m., the site was running smooth again. By 8:00 a.m., I'd moved traffic back to corporate infrastructure, torn the proxy down, rotated keys, and filed the incident report with a full timeline for audit. I walked into my apartment that morning feeling like a zombie with a keyboard. Lucas was in the kitchen, making coffee. He turned when he heard the door. "You look like you argued with a router and lost." "Botnet," I said, dropping my bag. "I won." He handed me a mug. "Great. Maybe someday they'll pay you like the person who kept them from trending for the wrong reasons." I laughed, but it lodged somewhere uncomfortably in my chest. The next morning, Bram was on stage at an all-hands meeting, smiling into the camera, bragging about how Helix's robust systems handled a recent threat automatically with minimal impact. My name didn't come up once. HR sent me a $25 pizza coupon later that week for employee appreciation. That was about when I realized how things really worked there. Executives took the credit. HR handed out crumbs. And the rest of us were supposed to be grateful for it. So I adapted. I started documenting everything: config files, internal scripts, credential rotations. Even the dumb mistakes no one wanted to admit lived in Helix's repos and wiki. Nothing left the building. I wasn't planning anything shady. I just wanted a record on their systems because I knew one day someone would blame me for their negligence. Every month I raised the same warnings: staffing gaps, single point of failure, no redundancy for critical infrastructure, no backup for me. I put it in reports, sent summaries and emails, attached graphs showing how close we were to breaking. I even color-coded the risk levels like a children's book, just so no one could pretend they didn't understand. Bram's response was always the same: "We're stretched thin, but you've got this, Arya." He meant, "You're alone, deal with it." At some point, the job stopped being about growth or challenge. It became survival. I worked because if I didn't, the company would probably fall apart. It wasn't even about loyalty anymore. I just hated sloppy systems. I couldn't stand watching things crumble from laziness. The worst part wasn't the hours. It was the fake appreciation. Every time I fixed a major issue, they tossed buzzwords at me: heroic effort, commitment to excellence, spirit of innovation. No raise, no backup, no plan to make things sustainable. Just more pizza coupons and one more shout-out in a Slack channel everyone muted. Quarterly review came and went. Bram smiled through it, said all the right words. Arya's contributions are invaluable, but we all need to remember teamwork. I remember staring at him over the edge of my notebook, thinking, what team? It was just me. Lucas tried to pull me back toward reality. One night I came home later than usual. The clock on the microwave said 1:37 a.m. He was sitting at the table with a takeout container in front of him, half eaten, the food dried out. "You didn't eat?" I asked. "Was waiting for you," he said. "Big incident," I started. "We had this chain of failures and—" "Arya," he cut in gently. "Do you know how many nights in a row I've heard the word incident before I hear anything about your day?" Guilt crawled up my spine. "I'm trying to keep them from falling apart," I said. "If I don't hold it together—" "Then they should hire more people," he said. "They're not your kids. They're a company." I wanted to believe that. Instead, I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and told myself I'd do better. Sleep more. Set boundaries. Be present. The next week, I clocked 60 hours. I realized something during those long nights. Helix didn't really want a security department. They wanted a shield, someone they could point to and say, "We're covered. while ignoring every warning sign I plastered in front of them. I was their safety net. So I did what I always do when systems get fragile. I prepared for failure. At home, in a separate notebook, I kept scrubbed patterns, anonymized architecture shapes, generic dependency checklists, and vendor-neutral emergency playbooks. No names, no IP ranges, no credentials, no helix diagrams. Just abstractions you'd find in any SRE handbook. If the place ever blew up, I wanted my conscience clear. Still, I didn't walk away. Not yet. Part of me hoped they'd wake up. Maybe Bram would finally see the risk. Maybe they'd hire help. Maybe HR would realize that one person doing 4 jobs wasn't a sustainable staffing model. They didn't. Instead, they cut the budget again. By then, even the cleaning crew knew me as the woman who never leaves. I wasn't vengeful. Just done. Done arguing. Done begging for resources. Done pretending a pizza coupon equaled respect. So when HR called me in for that clarification meeting, I already knew how it would end. What they didn't know was that they were firing the only thing holding their digital empire together. They'd learn soon enough. Back then, before the ambush in the glass-walled conference room, Helix was already starting to rot from the inside. Everyone pretended to be busy, while the same 2 or 3 of us actually kept the place running. By my 3rd year, I was clocking 60 hours a week and still plugging holes left by departments that no longer existed. That's when I went to a small cybersecurity meetup in Chicago. I paid for the trip myself because Helix had temporarily suspended conference travel, cheap hotel ballroom, folding chairs, free coffee that tasted burnt. I gave a short talk on handling incident response with limited resources. Mostly people like me showed up. Small teams, understaffed departments, the ones trying to keep things alive while leadership bragged about innovation. Afterward, a woman walked up and introduced herself as Renata Voss, head of security at Veritas Dynamics. I'd heard of them. Growing security firm, clean architecture, good culture, the kind of place people mentioned with a slight, hopeful sigh. She didn't waste time with flattery. "You did all that work solo?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Company downsized everyone but me." She nodded like she understood that too well. "You must have no life." "Pretty much." She laughed, then said, "How do you feel about consulting? Weekends only, non-competitive. We could use a brain like yours." I told her I'd need to check my contract first. She appreciated that. No pushy recruiter energy, just straightforward respect. That night, in the hotel room with the world's thinnest walls, I pulled up Helix's HR portal and read the policy. It only restricted outside work if it was directly competitive or detrimental to Helix Systems' interests. Veritas did security consulting, not SaaS products. No conflict. No appearance of conflict language anywhere. The last modified timestamp sat at the top of the PDF like a quiet witness. I took a screenshot. Then I said yes. And that was the moment my life split into 2 parallel systems, one about to collapse and one just beginning to boot. That first weekend consulting for Veritas felt like stepping into a different timeline, a better one. Saturday morning, I logged into their sandbox environment from my tiny kitchen table while Lucas made pancakes behind me. The second I saw their documentation, I froze. It made sense. Clear naming conventions, readable architecture diagrams, tickets with actual context, no panicked messages asking how to reboot a server. Veritas felt like a place built by adults. Helix felt like a group project where one person does everything and everyone else gets an A. I started with small tasks. Cleaning up messy code, automating certificate renewals, simplifying monitoring dashboards. The kind of maintenance work that prevents disasters before anyone ever notices. Every time I pointed out a security gap, an engineer at Veritas said, "Got it, I'll fix that today." No defensiveness. No lectures about tone. No corporate ego. Just competence. Lucas slid a plate of pancakes in front of me, leaned down, kissed the top of my head, and whispered, "Don't work too long." I murmured something vague, half listening, half dazzled by a monitoring panel that actually had proper alerts configured. He watched me for a moment, brow creased, then went to the living room. And that was my first mistake, thinking the only system worth monitoring was Helix's. Bye. By the second weekend, Renata added me to their internal Slack, introduced me as the woman who keeps companies alive despite management. It was half a joke, half prophecy. The Veritas team welcomed me like an equal. They debated ideas, fixed problems fast, and documented everything properly. They didn't treat burnout as a personality trait. They didn't worship heroic suffering. They didn't act threatened when I disagreed. It reminded me why I got into tech in the first place. to solve problems, not babysit incompetence. Meanwhile, Helix was sliding into something uglier.
Yes.
Monday morning, I walked back into Helix and felt the shift immediately. Silence in the hallways. People whispering. Slack pings slowing down when I logged in. Nova's office door half open while she spoke to someone on a call. Yes, we saw her credentials check in time. No, she hasn't responded yet. My name, my work, being discussed like I wasn't 3 feet away. Dorian passed me in the hallway. Hope you're keeping focused, Arya, he said with a too-wide smile. The type of smile people use right before they shove you off a cliff. I didn't bite. That afternoon, Lucas texted me. Louis, dinner tonight? I'm thinking Thai. I stared at the message far longer than necessary, then typed, me, late again. Don't wait up. His reply came after a long pause. Lucas, okay, be safe. 3 words. Not angry, not guilt-trippy, just tired. I ignored the ache in my chest. During the week at Helix, the arat got worse. Meetings happened without me. Test environments broke, and no one told me they'd change configurations. Reports I submitted got edited for clarity until my warnings sounded like minor suggestions. And then the laptop audit. Random, according to Nova. Except no one else got one. She stood by my desk with her tight, punitive smile. Routine data hygiene, she said. Sure, because nothing screams routine like printing out a list of every external IP I'd touched in the last 90 days. I kept both worlds separate, different laptop, different network, different VPN. Even a dedicated router at home, just for Veritas. Everything clean, everything compliant, everything provable. But facts don't matter much when a company decides it wants a villain. And Helix was looking at me like I'd walked in with a confession written across my face. Week 3 at Veritas, I solved in 2 hours a monitoring issue they'd struggled with for a month. They thanked me. Not with pizza coupons, not with hollow speeches, just simple, human gratitude. One of the engineers even added my name to the commit message. That tiny gesture, my name, my work, acknowledged in plain text, hit harder than I expected. I sat there staring at it longer than necessary, wondering how long it had been since credit wasn't a currency I had to fight for.
Dead.
On the flip side, at Helix, people who used to chat with me by the coffee machine suddenly fell silent when I walked in. Slack messages slowed, then stopped. Coworkers avoided eye contact. One afternoon, I heard my name again from inside Nova's office. And if we can't confirm her loyalty, we'll need to escalate. Loyalty. Like this was a medieval kingdom, and I'd sworn fealty. No. Lucas finally said something when we got takeout one night. Me exhausted. Him watching me like someone studying cracks in a dam. You're working 2 jobs, he said softly. When do you sleep? I'm fine, I lied. Arya, you can't keep burning yourself for people who don't even know what you do. I didn't answer. Because answering would have required me to admit something. I didn't feel dead inside when I worked for Veritas. I felt competent again. Human again. Like myself. But that wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was darker. For the first time in months, I wasn't scared of being replaced. Because at Veritas, I wasn't replaceable. And at Helix, they were starting to act like they wished I was.
Bets.
By the 4th weekend, Renata asked if I could review some of their security processes before an upcoming audit. I spent a few hours writing a checklist and some automation scripts to speed up compliance scans. She messaged, "This is solid. You just saved my team a full week." I didn't blush often, but I felt it then. When people believe in your work, you start to believe in yourself again. When they sabotage you, you start watching every shadow. Veritas was light. Helix was shadow. And the shadows were getting colder.
Betrayed.
The last Monday of that month, I stepped into the Helix office and felt something new. Fear. Not mine, theirs. People were acting strangely, quiet, tense, avoidant. Like they knew something I didn't. By 11 a.m., I knew. Someone had seen me near the Veritas building. Someone had mentioned my name in the wrong channel. Someone had connected dots they didn't understand. Helix had decided I was a threat. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I was doing something they couldn't control. Still, I didn't change anything. My work was clean. My conscience was clean. My consulting contract was legitimate. I wasn't stealing. I wasn't betraying anyone. I was just finally being paid what I was worth for work done right. But in their eyes, competence was betrayal. Independence was disloyalty. Boundaries were suspicious. And resentment was already simmering beneath their perfectly polished floors. By then, weekends at Veritas felt like a second life. A better one. During the week, I was patching holes at a company that would never thank me. On weekends, I was building systems that worked. The line between those two worlds was blurring. And Helix was about to notice. They already had. The countdown to my clarification meeting had quietly begun, and the clock was ticking loud enough to drown out everything else. Even Lucas, even sleep, even common sense. But I didn't hear it yet. I didn't know then that the next time Helix called my name, it would be to end everything. I didn't know it then, but the last week before my clarification meeting was the final stage of something Helix had been planning quietly, methodically, almost surgically. A slow freeze-out, the kind of internal rot that starts with a whisper and ends with a severance packet. I should have seen it coming. The signs weren't subtle, just easy to ignore when you're exhausted. Monday. Someone removed me from a recurring engineering sync I'd attended for 3 years. My calendar simply said, "Update, attendance no longer required." Right. Because suddenly the person who maintained all their authentication systems didn't need to be kept in the loop. I asked the team lead privately. She blinked like she was afraid of getting too close to me. That came from above, she murmured. Not my call. Above. Nova or Dorian. Maybe both. Get him. Tuesday. My incident report was returned for tone adjustments. Tone. The word stung sharper than it should have. The original said, "This failure will recur and escalate unless we add redundancy." The corrected version said, "We should explore redundancy when feasible." They turned a fire alarm into a yoga suggestion. Wednesday. A deployment broke staging. I wasn't notified. At midnight, I logged in to check alerts, habit, not duty, and saw error logs screaming. My stomach nodded. Someone had pushed a config change without telling me. When I called the on-call engineer, he whispered, "I was told not to bother you unless things hit production." I stared at the ceiling, pulse hammering. So they were isolating me and increasing the chances something would blow up under my name. A perfect setup. Thursday. Nova showed up at my desk holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Laptop audit," she announced. Her tone made it sound like confession. I raised an eyebrow. "Random?" "Routine," she lied. She opened every log, scrolled through every external IP. Her eyes narrowed at one of the clean entries, the IP belonging to the dedicated router I used at home for Veritas work. She didn't understand what she was looking at, but she smelled opportunity. "That's unusual," she commented. "It's compliant," I replied. "Check the policy if you'd like." She didn't answer, but she didn't have to. Her silence was louder than a threat. Friday. A friendly reminder email from Dorian landed in my inbox. As always, Helix expects unwavering loyalty and alignment with our values. It read like a breakup text from someone who thinks they're the one being betrayed. Lucas noticed the shift in me that night. We were in the living room, lights low, dinner half eaten, and he put his hand over mine. "Aria," he said softly, "are they making you nervous?" "No," I lied. He didn't push, just looked at me with that worried, gentle patience he always had. I'd been with him for almost 3 years. Met him before the burnout, before Helix started shaping itself into a cage around me. Back then, he used to say, "I love that you're passionate." Lately, he whispered, "I miss you." Saturday. At Veritas, I felt like I'd stepped into another reality. Renata greeted me like a colleague, not a liability. The office buzzed with energy, not fear. People laughed, debated, asked questions without flinching. I fixed a logging script, simplified a certificate rotation process, and wrote an SOP draft, all before lunch. An engineer named Devin added my name to a commit message. That tiny acknowledgement warmed something in my chest I didn't realize had gone cold. Before I packed up for the day, Renata caught me at the elevator. "You're doing excellent work," she said. "Seriously, if you ever want to come full-time, let's talk." I smiled. I'm honored. But some part of me felt a twist of guilt, as if accepting recognition was betrayal, as if Helix had trained me to feel unworthy of basic respect. Sunday. I opened my laptop to prep for the week, something I never did on weekends before consulting. A single line from Lucas appeared on the screen. He'd left it as a note in our shared grocery list app of all places. "Do you still want this life, us, or just the work?" It shouldn't have hit so hard, but it did. I stared at it for a long time, too long, and typed back, "I want you. I just need to get through this quarter." He didn't respond. I closed the app, pretending the hollow feeling in my chest wasn't fear. Monday morning. The office felt like a tomb, the quiet kind, where everyone pretends to be working so no one hears their heartbeat. And then it came, a notification on my monitor. Meeting invite, clarification, 10:15 a.m. From Dorian Hale. Subject line blank. No agenda. No attendees listed except me, Dorian, and Nova. My stomach tightened. This wasn't a check-in. This was a setup. Nico passed by my desk, eyes wide, whispering, Arya, something's off today. People are talking. I didn't ask what. I didn't need to. I already knew. Helix had followed the same script companies use when they want someone gone. Isolate them. Cut information flow. Question loyalty. Build a case behind closed doors. Execute the removal. And step 5 was now on my calendar. Cat. I walked into the glass-walled conference room. Dorian sat at the head of the table, posture straight, smug. Nova was already typing like she wanted to transcribe her own villain monologue. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and corporate betrayal. We replayed the confrontation you already know. The photo, the accusations, the appearance of conflict, the replaceable line, the termination letter. The finality of a signature I didn't regret signing. And then walking through the office, every pair of eyes tracking me, until the building spat me out into sunlight. What you don't know is this. I didn't go home immediately. I didn't want to face Lucas with the truth, not yet. Not the tired version of him who waited up for me. Not the disappointed softness in his voice. Not the silence he held when he didn't know how to ask. What is left of us if work keeps consuming you? I needed time to breathe. To think. To decide whether the life I'd been building was even mine anymore. So instead of turning right toward home, I turned left toward something else. Something better. Veritas. Bet! The Veritas building wasn't glassy or dramatic. Just clean lines, neutral colors, plants that weren't plastic. The receptionist smiled, genuinely. You must be Arya. Renata's expecting you. I walked through their hallway and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Ease. Not tight-chested tension. Not hypervigilance, just ease. Renata met me halfway down the hall, tablet in one hand, coffee in the other. You look lighter, she said. I got rid of a few pounds of corporate nonsense, I replied. She grinned. Good. Come on. I want to show you something. She led me into their operations room. Monitors lined the wall. Dashboards were clear. Everything organized. Everything intentional. This is what a healthy system looks like, she said. No fires, no panic, just steady. I stared at the screens for a long moment. It felt like seeing sunlight after years underground. And then she asked, You free full-time now? I took a breath. Effective immediately. She handed me a visitor badge. Let's start with lunch. Then we'll talk about something bigger. Something bigger. I didn't know it yet, but she meant a role I'd been denied my entire career. A role built on trust, not exploitation. A role that would change everything. My first week at Veritas felt like culture shock. Good culture shock. Monday morning, I walked into an actual onboarding session. Printed credentials ready, system access pre-configured, a map of their infrastructure waiting on the desk like a little architectural welcome gift. The lead engineer, a calm guy named Lennox, walked me through their pipeline step by step. Every part of it made sense. Nobody was guessing. Nobody was improvising. Nobody was duct taping critical systems together at 2 a.m. By lunchtime, I'd met the entire security team. 6 people. 6. Not one burned-out gremlin trying to keep a tech empire from falling apart in the dark. Everyone introduced themselves with genuine excitement, not that brittle office cheerfulness Helix pretended was engagement. I almost felt shy, like I'd stepped into a version of reality I wasn't built for. Meanwhile, Helix was crumbling. Fast. The first sign came from Nico. A message buzzed on my phone as I was finishing a documentation review. Nico. They're saying you sabotaged something. Systems are crashing everywhere. I stared at the screen, then typed. Me. Nah, just physics. Entropy always wins. No reply. He was probably running around trying to put out fires with a paper cup. A few hours later, I saw the first industry chat room post. Anyone else seeing Helix's status page? Everything's down. Someone posted screenshots. Red lights everywhere. Expired TLS certs. Misconfigured DNS. Authentication failures spiking. Database timeouts. Queue backlogs. I didn't touch a single thing on my way out, but I knew exactly how it happened. They ignored my warnings about cert renewals. Ignored dependency risks. Ignored the graphs I'd color-coded for them like a preschool lesson. Ignored every flagged system. Systems don't break out of spite. They break out of neglect. By Wednesday, tech news sites picked up the story. Helix Systems suffers. Major outage. Client. Access. Impacted stock plummets. 15%. Their PR statement blamed temporary infrastructure misconfiguration. Translation. They had no idea what they were doing. At Veritas, Lennox pulled up an industry chat thread and whistled. That your old place? Yep, I said, sipping my coffee. Looks bad. Yeah, systems hate being treated like an afterthought. He smirked. You gonna rescue them? I shrugged. Sure, if they can afford me. Renata overheard. Charge market rate if they do, she said. Actually, charge above market rate, emotional damages. I laughed, a real laugh. Not the tight, brittle kind Helix beat into me. By Friday, internal Helix chats leaked. Someone wrote, "Who has access to this system?" Another replied, "No one since Arya left." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Renata caught me reading the thread. "That's going to be you if you don't stop doom-scrolling your ex," she joked. And she was right. Helix was my bad ex. The kind that drains you, discards you, then texts you at 3 a.m. saying, "Hey." And Saturday morning, that hey arrived, in the form of an unknown number vibrating before dawn. I ignored the first call. The second. By the third, curiosity won. "Hello?" A male voice, taut with panic. "Ms. Vale, this is Victor Ainsley, chairman of the board at Helix Systems." Of course it was. I leaned back in my kitchen chair, staring at the barely lit apartment. "I figured," I said. "You sound like someone used to getting what he wants." He exhaled sharply through the receiver. "Our production systems are failing. Critical processes are down. Clients are threatening to cancel contracts. We are hemorrhaging money by the hour." I sipped my coffee. He continued. "We need your help. Name your price." Ah, there it was. The punchline of their entire 3-year comedy show. I let the pause hang long enough for him to sweat. Then I said, $2,000 an hour, 6-hour minimum, paid in advance. I work remote, limited access, nothing long-term. Silence. Then, "I'm fine. Anything else?" "Yeah," I said, "a few conditions." And I listed them. A written apology acknowledging they mishandled my termination. A public statement correcting their invented appearance of conflict clause. Reinstated severance for the people they dumped recently. A full-time offer and budget for Nico effective immediately. I could practically hear his soul leaving his body. But desperation outweighs pride in a crisis. Victor inhaled sharply. "We'll agree to all of that. Just fix it." 20 minutes later, Veritas Legal drafted a 1-page emergency MSA. Renata greenlit the engagement within seconds. Helix wired payment. I was provisioned a temporary admin account labeled Consult X1. Cute. Probably so they could disable it the second they didn't need me. Fine by me. When the video call started, the fear was visible. Dozens of tiny squares. Faces gray under fluorescent lights. Victor sitting at the head of a long boardroom table. Bram looking like he hadn't slept in days. Nova stiff and beautifully painted, her expression brittle. Dorian pale, sweating, pretending to look calm while his career burned behind him. I didn't smile. "Morning," I said. "Let's start with what's broken." Victor gestured helplessly. "Bram, show her the dashboards." Bram shared his screen. Chaos. Pure chaos. Spiking errors. Stalled pipelines. Authentication failures. Compromised caches. Orphaned services no one had maintained since I left. Dependencies stacked like a Jenga tower built by toddlers. He looked at me with embarrassed defeat. I didn't coddle him. "You let these things grow like weeds," I said. "Okay, here's the plan." Nova's voice cut in sharply. "You don't have authority here anymore." Victor's voice snapped like a whip. "He does now. Sit back." Her jaw clenched. I began triage. Methodical, cold, efficient. Rebuilt broken Elasticsearch indexes, compressed old logs, fixed duplicate cron jobs, patched rate limit filters, rotated stale certs, repaired cache layer, cleaned queue backlogs, wrote scripts for maintainability. Every step faster than anyone else on the call could even comprehend. I narrated everything, so there'd be a written trail. Bram tried to reclaim dignity. "We were about to try that." "Sure," I said. "After Googling it." He shut up. Nova's eye twitched. Dorian cleared his throat weakly. "You make this sound easy." "It was always easy," I said. "You just didn't listen." 4 hours in, dashboards turned green one by one. 6 hours in, production stabilized. The fire was out. The corpse was still smoking, but the bleeding had stopped. Victor exhaled in relief. "You saved us, Ms. Vale." "No," I corrected. "Just doing the job you fired me from." Boom. 15 minutes later, the wire cleared. $12,000 for 6 hours of work. A number that would have made me nauseous a year ago. Now it just felt fair. The internal apology email went out. Then the public one, correcting everything, erasing their accusations. Nico texted me. "Nico, they posted the apology. Everyone's talking about you. They want you back so badly, it's embarrassing." I typed back. "Me. Congrats on the new job offer. Make sure they give you a budget before you say yes." He sent back 3 exclamation points and a cactus emoji. I closed my laptop. Silence filled the room. Not loneliness, not burnout. Just quiet. The good kind. The kind made of boundaries. Helix wasn't my nightmare anymore. Helix was just another system I'd debugged and walked away from. I didn't expect peace to feel so strange. After stabilizing Helix's systems and sending my final notes to Victor, I closed my laptop and just sat there, hands still, breathing slow. No alerts, no pings, no dread. Just silence. The kind you don't realize you've forgotten until it finally returns. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my kitchen table, not the cold blue light of a dashboard firing off warnings, but actual sunlight, the kind normal people see. I was on my second cup of coffee when I heard footsteps. Lucas came out of the bedroom, hair a mess, shirt wrinkled, looking like he'd slept badly. He glanced at my empty laptop screen and raised an eyebrow. "You're not working?" "No," I said simply. He blinked, like I'd spoken a foreign language. "You feeling okay?" I nodded. He sat across from me slowly, as if afraid the moment might shatter. "I saw the news," he said. "About Helix, about the outage." "Mm-hmm. And then I saw your message from last night." "That message. You're good for now, but don't mistake survival for security." He studied my face. "You sound different." I shrugged. Maybe I finally stopped letting them write the story. He reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "But can I ask something?" "Sure. Are you done with them? For real?" I squeezed his hand back. "I'm done letting anyone claim pieces of me they didn't earn." His shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. Then he smiled. "Good, because I made breakfast." It was such a normal thing to say, and it made my throat tighten. A normal life, a normal morning, a normal relationship. Things I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Gamam. The rest of that week at Veritas was a strange blend of calm and momentum. While Helix was patching their bleeding infrastructure, we were pushing clean deployments, updating runbooks, and refining automation scripts. Real engineering, not emergency duct tape. Every time a new alert popped up, someone handled it immediately. No panic, no finger pointing, just teamwork. I helped Lennox rewrite part of their incident response workflow. He said it made things twice as fast. Renata passed by, reading over my shoulder. "This is good," she said. "You're making the whole team sharper." I shrugged. Praise still felt like a foreign object in my hands. "Just cutting out the stupid steps." "Good," she said. "Keep doing that. You're setting the tone." Tone. Funny how the same word Helix used as a weapon, Veritas used as recognition. By Wednesday, Helix's internal chaos spilled further into the public. Industry blogs published an exposé titled, "Helix's lone engineer warned leadership for years before exit." No names, but everyone knew who they meant. My inbox filled with messages from old colleagues, recruiters, former classmates. Some congratulating, some gossiping, some confessing, "You were right." I ignored most of it. I wasn't interested in being a cautionary tale. But then I got a message from Nico. Just one line. "Nico, they should have listened." I felt that one. Deep. Wow. By Friday afternoon, Helix's meltdown had become background noise. People stopped asking questions, stopped panicking, stopped spiraling. You can only hold your breath for so long before you just move on. But Helix wasn't moving on. Helix was unraveling. Someone leaked a snippet of an emergency chat. Who has access to the old load balancer configs? Only Aria ever touched those. Did she document it? We don't know. The irony was exquisite. I had documented everything. They were the ones who ignored it. Renata skimmed the thread and laughed. "This is why we're building Fortify," she said. "So companies stop creating single point of human failure situations." "Single point of human failure," I repeated, smirking. "Is that the HR term for me?" She nudged me lightly. "No, that's the term for them." That night, I got a call from a well-known VC firm wanting to chat about potential advisory roles. I declined. I wasn't chasing titles anymore. I wanted something real, something built on intention, not exploitation. Something like Veritas. Saturday morning, my phone buzzed again. Not an unknown number this time. Nico. The apology is pinned in the company's Slack. People are saying things like, "Aria saved this place," and "We should have hired her 3 years ago." I typed back, "Me. And now you're getting hired, with a real budget. Don't let them lowball you." He sent back, "A cactus flexing next to flames. Chaotic, but cute." I set my phone down and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, Sunday didn't feel like a countdown to disaster. Monday didn't feel like a trap. I wasn't bracing for the next emergency, the next failure, the next accusation. I wasn't waiting for Helix's ghost to grab my ankles. I was free, truly free, and ready for whatever came next. 3 months later, I stepped into the new Veritas office and had to stop walking. The glass wall in front of me had a fresh, gleaming sign. Fortify. Security Consulting Division. Director, Aria Vale. Director. My name. Not a footnote, not a buried credit, not an easily erased line item. A title earned without self-destruction. I stood there a second too long because someone behind me called out, "Morning, boss!" It was Devin, the engineer who once thanked me in a commit message. Now he grinned at me like we were co-conspirators in building something sane. "Morning," I said, "and stop calling me boss. Renata will write me up for developing an ego." He laughed. "Too late. We already started a shared doc." "What doc?" "The stuff Aria says that gives us anxiety and inspiration at the same time, doc." I shook my head, smiling. Chaos, but friendly chaos. Inside, Fortify didn't look like Helix. Whiteboards everywhere, markers and colors that actually worked. Dashboards showing stable logs. People in hoodies and jeans, debating code without hierarchies strangling the room. Plants that weren't plastic. Actual life, actual energy. A far cry from the fluorescent graveyard I walked out of months ago. Nico appeared from behind a cluster of monitors, holding something small and green. A cactus. My cactus. The one I'd abandoned on my Helix desk, half to spite them, half because it deserved better than that airless place. "Found this when I went back for my stuff," he said. "Can't believe it survived in that environment." "Employee number 2, I said with a grin. Someone from across the room yelled, "Promote the cactus before it promotes itself." The whole team cracked up. This kind of laughter, had been extinct at Helix. Here, it was oxygen. Hey. Our client list grew faster than we expected. Banks, logistics firms, startups, even a medical tech company that practically begged for a full audit. Every intro call started the same. "We don't want to be the next Helix." Helix had become a cautionary tale in the industry, a whispered warning, a case study in how to burn down your own infrastructure by ignoring basic humanity. We didn't need marketing. Their meltdown was our billboard. Renata handled the big picture deals. I ran operations. I built Fortify on one rule. Nobody here is irreplaceable, not as a threat, but as protection. No single point of failure, no all-nighters, no secrecy, no heroics that required sacrificing sleep, relationships, or sanity. Everything documented, everything shared, everything sustainable. People here took vacations, real ones. They got sick, without fear. They had bad days, without guilt. Helix had taught me what a toxic system looked like. Fortify was the antidote. By the end of that first quarter, Veritas announced us as their fastest growing division. We got invited to speak at a cybersecurity conference. Our session title? Building Resilient Systems Without Burning Out Engineers. Standing on that stage next to Renata, watching people nod along as I explained how single-person departments create silent vulnerabilities, I realized something profound. Competence wasn't the enemy of stability. Exploitation was. Helix didn't fail because they lacked talent. They failed because they treated talent like disposable hardware. After the talk, a young engineer approached me. "You're the Helix woman, right?" he said. I winced internally, but nodded. He stuck out his hand. "Good for you. Seriously. Everyone knew that place was a mess." Still is, I thought, but smiled politely. He walked off, leaving me with a strange mixture of pride and melancholy. You don't walk away from a trauma without some part of it echoing. Even success casts shadows. A few weeks later, I got an internal memo forwarded from a contact who still worked at Helix. Updates. Nova left for a smaller firm to pursue better culture alignment. Dorian vanished from LinkedIn, rumored to have been quietly let go. Bram still at Helix, but sidelined. No more conferences, no more press quotes, just existing. A ghost in a shrinking office. The company rebuilt most of their infrastructure using the notes and scripts I'd written. The ones they once dismissed. The ones they edited for tone. Their new CSO even cited Fortify during an all-hands. Renata showed me the clip on her phone. "You're basically their blueprint now," she said. I shrugged. At least they learned something. One Friday, the team dragged me out for lunch at a noisy ramen bar. Devin argued with Lennox about whether SSO needed a separate audit path. Nico teased me for ordering the mild broth. Someone spilled water and laughed instead of panicking. It was chaotic, messy, alive. For the first time in years, I wasn't scanning for danger. Wasn't bracing for a pager alert. Wasn't drafting mental incident reports at the table. I was present. Just Aria. Not a shield, not a martyr, not a department of one. A person. After lunch, I took the long way back to the office. The street was familiar. Too familiar. I looked up, and there it was. The Helix building. Colder than I remembered. One of the upper floors had a for lease sign taped to the window. The lobby was nearly empty. No chatter, no buzz, just that same sterile white light that once made my chest tight. I crossed the street and stood there for a few seconds. Not out of longing, not out of bitterness. Just reflection. They fired me to make a point. But in the end, I was the only one who learned the right lesson. You can't build an empire on arrogance and expect it to hold. My phone buzzed. A message from Renata. Renata, new client confirmed. Finance group in London wants Fortify for a full rebuild. I typed back. Me. On it. Let's make sure they never become the next Helix. I took one last glance at the building, the ghost of a life I'd outgrown, then turned away. They fired me for having 2 jobs. Funny, because the truth was, I'd been doing everyone else's job for years, and for the first time, I was finally doing mine.